The 49ers had a 2024 season that was devastated by injuries, but you can never count out any 49ers players when it comes to your fantasy lineups, and 2025 will be no different. Let's have a look at the San Francisco depth chart from a point of view of our redraft leagues. I am joined by Joe of Good Teams Win, Great Teams Cover. And we'll start where we always start. We will start at quarterback. We will start with Mr. Brock Purdy. He dealt with injuries all around, and we've said this at the very top, yet he's still got it done for fantasy. I think 5 rushing touchdowns, 4 rushing attempts per game has given him a floor I don't think we usually expected from Brock Purdy. That means that he's always going to be in discussion, isn't he, as a fringe QB1.
Yeah, definitely. Like you mentioned, with all the injuries last year, with the offensive line, which always looks suspect at the start of the year. He's always that solid player who, gets you them points. Just depending what kind of league you're in, obviously. But yeah, just a fringe QB1. And this year, I think it's going to be no different. I think the certain stats could change a little bit, just in terms of. I think he rushed a little bit more last year than he has the first 2 years he's been in the league. But I don't know if that was due to the injuries and the players not being open and having one of the hardest schedules. I'm sure it was like one of the worst schedules they could have got in terms of who they were playing and the rest and all that. And it's flipped. The league decided it feels like they felt sorry for the 49ers last year. So they've given him a very easy schedule going forward. So I think they could be, if everyone stays fit, I think he could get more points through the air than his rushing yards, which, like you mentioned, went slightly up, but I think he's a good solid pick. Where he is, I think where people are getting him is probably where he's got that great floor. He's going to have some games where he's certainly winning you games, but there's also going to be other games where he's just giving it to McCaffrey non-stop and he doesn't get the points you desire.
Yeah, so I've got him ranked as around our QB 15. He's currently going off the board, round 9, QB 12. I mean, when we're talking tail end of that, it's very much in that kind of tier where he could end up at 12, could end up at 16. It seems fair, but it's probably just going at his ceiling for me. If everyone around him stays fit, then that is going to reflect really good value. But I said, I completely agree. There are going to be those really good weeks where we're down. So it is going to be matchup dependent, isn't it? And depending how you draft quarterbacks, you're likely to be taking 2 if Brock Purdy is on your roster to start the season, aren't you?
Yeah, 100%. Like I said, it's very matchup given. It's like certain games, and I'm curious how they're going to play this year, because I think he's a great scrambler and he is a great short distance, just getting getting them TDs when they're on the goal line. But are they just going to give it more to McCaffrey this year? So I think it's the injuries, and if everyone's fit, I think you want to draft someone else, and it's more the matchup. But I think what I saw beforehand, I think they have the 3rd easiest matchup in terms of fantasy wise than any other QBs, just because they're playing the NFC South and the AFC South. So they've got some of them matchups where you'll be rubbing your hands, being like, oh, he's going to get some points this week, just with the oppositions that they're playing compared to last year, where it felt like it was a gauntlet most weeks.
We've mentioned injuries already, and we're going to mention injuries several times on this record. So let's move on to Christian McCaffrey. I think I've got quite a strong view on McCaffrey here, so I'm going to give you my perspective, but then I'm going to see where you're at for fantasy, but also where you're at after the hurt of last year as a 49ers fan as well. For me, throw last year out completely. Going around him in redraft at the minute, Ashton Genty, Juaun Jennings, Drake London, AJ Brown. At that point in redraft, I'm taking CMC every single time, because he's the only one out of that mix, bar an unworldly debut season for Genty. He's the only one who has it in him to finish as the number 1 fantasy player overall. He can be a league winner rather, but people will overthink the injuries again. I think, yes, there is a risk. We've seen it. We've seen that missed time. The thing that really appeals to me, and I can't pass up from a fantasy point of view, is even in the handful of games he had last year, he had 18% target share. And that just makes it, for me, absolutely worth the risk at that point. If he was going around 6, 7, I'd maybe have a little think of other players that are going around there. But on the round 1, 2 turn, where he's currently going, probably early in the second in most leagues, I can't resist him. Am I being naive, Joe?
I'm 100% behind you. I've got McCaffrey going. Like, I think last year probably burnt a lot of bridges in terms because he went RB1 last year and everyone was excited. And, Cal didn't help anyone out where he said he was going to play and then Monday night suddenly didn't play week 1 and didn't play much of the year. So, it certainly hurt a lot of fantasy players who had pick 1 who might stay away from him. But how it sounds all this off season, he's fully fit. He's looking great. I think last year it felt like throughout the summer he had niggly injuries and obviously they didn't give us the in-depth of what was the issue was. But this year it just sounds like he's fully fit. He's ready to go. Obviously you would an extra year with McCaffrey and with the amount of the touches he does get. But on the flip side, that's why the ceiling's so high that when he plays, he touches the ball all the time. I think, you just look at the 2023 season, he was averaging 17 rushes per game and 4 catches, so over 20 touches per game. And when you compare against that, the other running backs who played against, they hardly touch the ball. So if he's fit, if he's healthy, the running team, they're going to give it to McCaffrey all day long. And with some of the injuries and some of the players they've lost, I think he's going to get even more touches. And that's what I also mentioned about with Purdy. I'm curious how they're going to play in terms of do they give him all them touches again and just risk that injury? But I think how the team's set up, it's going through McCaffrey. He's fully fit. I'm on most of my draft boards. I'm looking at McCaffrey if I'm near the end because I think I've got. I'm fairly confident. If he's fit, he's going to be one at least in the top 3 running backs fantasy wise.
I've got him down as my RB2 to start the season, and that is purely because I'm so high on Bijan that I see Bijan as the RB1 overall this year. I could see them finishing either way. Throw Saquon into the mix again if he has another solid season. Jameer Gibbs is receiving it. That is a solid tier 1 for me. That I see McCaffrey definitely due his place. People are going to worry about the injuries, and that is why quite likely people are going to be more interested in the running back depth chart of San Francisco than many of the teams. And we know that every one of these 3 players that I've just popped up now, Guerendo, James, and Taylor Jr., we could see any one of these having a heck of a lot of fab spent on them any given week if they have, if CMC goes down, one of them comes in, or a massive game from nowhere comes in. For me, Guerendo, we saw he had 3 top 24 games post week 14. That means that you could argue a bench stash in case of CMC injuries. It's not how I like to use my bench, but I can understand people doing that. But yeah, any of those, who would you be looking at most keenly to potentially carve out a role either alongside CMC and having a little bit of flex value, or if CMC's down, who would you pick to be the lead back out of those 3?
It's tricky. I think the problem with, obviously Guerendo, if CMC's injured, he is going to be the running back they're probably going to go with because he was there last year and I think he was averaging 5 yards per rush. So he had a decent year coming from nowhere. As like you said, the 49ers love to draft a running back in round 4. It's Kyle's, he just loves to do that. And they always get game time. But it depends how high they are. If Juaun Jennings, I think he could be a good one picking up on waivers or right at the end. I think with Isaac Guerendo, he is a big back. Even last year, him and Mason only really played the first and second downs. They weren't really the third down kind of running backs. And I think that's what hurt the 49ers. They didn't have that flexible and maybe one of the reasons why they traded away Jordan Mason, where they felt like Guerendo could just do what he does and then get more of a pass catcher out the back with the running back. So, if you worried about the injuries, the problem is Isaac Guerendo got injured a couple of times last year. It feels like every 49ers players did. No matter how good they played, they had 1 or 2 good games and then got injured. So I would probably sneak Juaun Jennings if it's the last round and you're looking for bench, or you just make sure you got an iron him on the waivers as soon as there's a slight story of a McCaffrey just tweak something, try and get one of them down in. But I wouldn't go too high on Guerendo just because if McCaffrey's fit, he's hardly going to touch the ball. He's going to come in, he's going to touch it 4 or 5 times a game, and you're wasting the spot doing that.
And obviously, you can never count out the 49ers potentially bring someone else in as well. So now is the time to point out we are recording this on the 13th of July. So if anything has changed on this depth chart by the time you're watching this, that is why. Before we move on to wide receiver, though, please do take a moment to give us a subscribe, a like, and a share. Go and check us out on X as well, th_fantasy_NFL. We've spoken about injuries already with CMC. We can say the word injury a fair amount, and that takes us on to Brandon Aiyuk next. Last season's wide receiver, 105. But he only played a full 6 games. During that time, though, he only averaged 8.3 points per game, and that is based on PPR scoring. We don't know if he's moved out. I mean, I think this is where it comes in about being burnt the year before as well. The news is that it's not out of the question that he's in for week 1, but like I said, it wasn't out of the question that CMC was going to be playing week 1. Look what happened. So a little bit of that maybe distrust of the 49ers injury report there could come into it as well. But the injury that Aiyuk suffered obviously was a nasty one. So ACL, MCL, and meniscus damage to his right knee. In layman's terms, his right knee was an absolute mess. And that is going to take a while to come back from as well. Even if he is fit week 1, when is he up to Aiyuk standard? And what we saw last year, Aiyuk standard wasn't what we'd come to expect from that as well. Currently going off the board around round 8, round 9 is wide receiver 42. Part of me thinks that's fair, but part of me also thinks there's a lot of other players I'm probably going to go for around that round 8, 9 position, knowing I can actually have them from week 1 more likely. What's your outlook for Aiyuk this year? Do you think he's going to be in the start of the season? And even if he is, are you interested in it from a fantasy perspective?
I'm probably going to stay away from Aiyuk. Aiyuk's been one of my favourite players to look out for. But I don't think he's going to play week 1. What I've seen in the reports is there's a chance, but more likely it's going to be a PUP start the season. And like you said, even last year when he didn't have a full off season because of the contract negotiations, and I think that hampered him massively. I think he seems that kind of player who needs the off season. He needs to, work within the Shanahan. It's not an easy playbook to understand, and it never felt like he was. He was up to game speed even before the injury, and he was a big disappointment. I don't believe this, but I heard some people well, he's got his contract now. Is he not going to try as hard and all that kind of thing? I don't believe in that kind of thing. I think he was because he sat out most of the off season, and the 49ers, how the 49ers normally do is, take the time with contracts. They actually did it well this year with Purdy, but most of the time it's you're sweating near the start of the season if they're going to play or not. So I think I'm going to stay away from him. I think, like you said, there's one wide receiver on the 49ers who I've seen go after him in a couple of drafts I'm in. Well, I was shocked that Aiyuk went first. I think it's more the name value people pick him on rather than the outlook. I think he's going to be a slow start. Is he going to get up to speed? I think it's going to be another year of. It's not until 2026 year when we get back, because just the type of player he is, he needs that explosive. Performance, and that knee injury wasn't just a clean ACL tear. It was like you said, it was a messed up knee, which takes time, and it wasn't an easy recovery. So I think it's going to be by the end of 2025 where he gets up to speed and maybe has 1 or 2 games. But I can't see him being back to his 2023 best this year, just because 1, the injury, and 2, just because he needs a longer off season to get up to speed. And I think some of the wide receivers could step up behind him.
And every single thing you have said there just makes me even more in on the player about to raise next, who is a bona fide TH Fantasy Football my guy for this off-season already. And that is Ricky Pearsall. He's a breakout candidate for me as well this year. Let's think back to last year. He was a round 1 pick. Not long before the start of the season, he was shot in the chest and missed out of that. As far as start of the season goes, it can't get much worse than that. And it's once again, this isn't a questionable character. This isn't one of our often NFL storylines of kind of poor choices outside the trade field. This was wrong place, wrong time, whilst there was a robbery going on. He's then, from that, come in, slow start of the season we expect from any rookie, but at the end of the season, we started to see him carving out a bit more of a role. The sample size is tiny, but those last couple of games, he still saw 18 targets, 210 yards, 2 touchdowns. He started to have the trust of the offense at that point. Samuel's gone. Aiyuk, we've discussed. Jennings, we'll talk about next, isn't consistent by any means for me. I think that he is really in with a shout of taking over as the wide receiver 1 on a very good offense in San Francisco. And with that will come that fancy value. So I've got he's going to be a weekly flex play. I think there is a sneaky chance he could have low-end wide receiver 2 value as well, potentially, as we move through the season. Are you in on Pearsall, or do you think it'll be somebody else that is going to take that lead target role in San Francisco this year?
In terms of the wide receiver 1, I think it's the person we'll probably talk about next. But I'm still high on Ricky Pearsall in terms of he's basically going to take over the Debo role. Obviously, trade away Debo Samuel to the Commanders, which wasn't a surprise. I felt like last year was his last year. So I think Pearsall's going to step up. I think with Aiyuk being not playing the start of the year, it's up to Pearsall to make that position his own. The 49ers normally play like just the 2 wide receivers in most sets, just because how they like to run and with their tight ends. So he needs to show that consistency and hit the ground running. The last 2 games last year, I think he got over 200 yards in both of them. So there's certainly positive outlook. They bought him in because he's a yak machine, like a lot of the 49ers wide receivers, so he can score you plenty of points. The only issue I have with Pearsall, and this is, I always have to be careful how I say this. So last year, not the instant being shot, but he had a few injuries before that as well. He had a few soft tissue injuries, especially hamstring, and it sounds like he's coming into this offseason with the same kind of injuries. You do worry about that. You hope he's not one of them players where you see them as breaking out every year, and it just like keeps picking up these little injuries. But I think that might have just been the 49ers luck last year. So I'm positive thinking that he's going to be fit throughout the year. But I think if he does, he's going to take over the Debo role. Will he get the touches like Debo does on the running side? I'm not quite sure on if he's got the body for that. But I think, I think he's going to have a good year. I think he has to hit the ground running because the 49ers with the other players they've got. If he's not, they've got plenty of other players to throw it to. So I'm positive. I probably would take. It depends on what's around there and the value. I wouldn't. I'm not going. I think the floor is. It's a very tricky floor. I don't see him having like a high floor where you're guaranteed to get points every week just because how the 49ers play. But it could be one of them players where you look at the end of the season, you're like, wow, how did I get him at that price? Because the ceiling could be very high for him.
That distance between the ceiling and the floor, as well, is my concern with our next player up, Juaun Jennings. 3 top 12 finishes last year. He had a couple of mega games which saw him to wide receiver 24 overall after going undrafted in most redraft leagues last year. But 6 finishes outside the top 50. So the variance was huge. You've said already that you see him as perhaps being more likely to be the lead receiver out of himself and Pearsall. Sell it to me, Joe. Why should I be drafting Jennings over Pearsall this offseason?
I think it's just like the value. I think when you look at some of them games, I just think back to like the Rams game where he had a huge game. I think every year he's getting better and better and better. And I think now he's in that position. He's the senior wide receiver where I think and it feels like him and Brock has got a good relationship. And I just taking that next step. I don't think he's going to be a wide receiver 1 in terms of like fancy wise or, you'll be set in terms of like, oh, this is our wide receiver 1. But I think out of all the wide receivers the 49ers have, I think he's going to get the most targets. He's a big body. When it's third down, it's 3rd and Juaun, where he seems to always go to him. And I think they're going to lean on him a lot more just with the Aiyuk injury and with Pearsall only coming in second year. So I see him being a sneaky, have that higher ceiling in terms of, and it depends what league you're in. I don't know if I would start him every week, but if you're in the best ball league, for example, I would definitely have him in because he's going to have some of these weeks where he goes off where he's hitting like 150 yards and maybe a couple of touchdowns. But I always think with the 49ers, the wide receiver is always the tricky position just because of the other positions that have who get the ball a lot more. But out the 3 49ers, I'm staking my claim on Juaun Jennings is going to have the better season just with how he's played in the past and just, what I see this like continuing him getting better and better.
Well, hopefully you'll have just witnessed a piece of seamless editing together as the internet decided to switch off on us as we're coming to the end of our discussion on Juaun Jennings. But, Joe, the answer to the question, which receiver should we be targeting in the 49ers, is none of the above, really, for me, because there's an obvious answer, and that is Mr. George Kittle. When you look at how consistent George Kittle has been, I think because we've had the hopes of him being like a clear-cut tight end, number one overall over the years, it's never quite come to that. I think it can be lost the fact that when we look over the last 4 years, it's been for PPR, tight end 4, then 3, then 5, then 3. We know he misses a game or two every single season. That's what happens with George Kittle. But last year, 10 top 6 finishes. Top 12 doesn't really cut it when it comes to tight ends, because that kind of 8 to 50, that's in your kind of streamer sort of mold. But if you're getting that many top 6 finishes, you can plug in, forget about it each week. Tight end's number 3 overall last year. I've got him down to be tight end number 3 this year as well. He just feels safe for at least 100 targets, 1,100-ish yards, somewhere between 6 to 8 touchdowns. I feel this year there's a bit of a tier break after Kittle. So tier 1 tight ends for me, Bowers, McBride. Kittle tier 2. I think it's almost like for me, tier 3 is blank until we get down then to tier 4, because there is such drop, which for me is why I feel George Kittle is a really good target where he's currently going in round 4. Depending on your strategy, is Kittle someone you will be actively targeting, someone you're hoping for a big real life season as well as a fantasy season as well this year?
Yeah, 100%. It's always like you mentioned, the floor is always high. I think with the last 2 years, he's always been one of the top targets for the 49ers. I think last year he actually had the most catches and the most yards, and that's what I was talking about with the wide receivers. It feels like Kittle is the man. And I agree with you. He's definitely in the tier below, like you said, McBride and Bowers, because they feel like they're glorified wide receivers who play at tight end, while George Kittle feels like a true. He's going to, get down the dirt and do a lot of blocking as well. But when they need someone big to step up, they always go to George Kittle. So I think he's going to get plenty of throws. And yeah, I think I'm definitely going to be targeting him at that stage. I'll probably try and get a second tight end later down the board, because like I said, I think the last 6 years he's at least missed one game and sometimes multiple games. Just the style of play is another year older, and like with a lot of players, I think he's going to miss a few games, but he just has that high upside, and I think some games he just takes over and let's just give it to George all the time. And I think what will help as well, especially with McCaffrey being back, the 49ers in 2023, I think they were the best in red zone conversions. Last year there was like 15th, where they dropped off massively, and I think it was the McCaffrey effect, that teams weren't scared of the running game. But now with McCaffrey back, I think last year they only had 36 out of 63 touchdowns when they were in the red zone. So I think with McCaffrey back, obviously he's going to get his touches and get them touchdowns. But I think Kittle it would be a big help for him just to get some of these wide receivers, tight ends open. And I think Kittle is the main target. Him and Juaun Jennings will be the main targets when they get down there. So I think he could have another big year, and Kittle just does Kittle things. And yeah, I think he'll be a great pick, like you mentioned, around 4, around 5.
And some of those just intangibles as well, things that nothing to do with fantasy. It's the sort of player I like to have some shares of, just because I like to be tuned into what George Kittle is doing any given week as well. He's a fantastic entertainer as well as a sportsman. So yeah, you can't help but have a little bit of George Kittle and celebrate when he does say George Kittle things most weeks. Looking to the season then, Joe, what are your hopes? What are your fears for the San Francisco 49ers entering the 2025 season?
My hopes they get back to what they've been consistent throughout the last few years. I think looking at the schedule, like you mentioned, I think they've got the easiest schedule. So I do expect them to have a good year, 12, 13 wins, just because, I think the schedule is the main thing. Obviously, they've had a huge change on the defense. They've got rid of quite a lot of players, and they've got a lot of young players in now, and they're hoping to stop the run and maybe not being in as many shootouts as they have been, especially last year. The fear is always the injuries. It felt like last year everything went wrong, every single play. Even coming into this year, I think one of the safeties tore his ACL on the last game of the year, but it was only announced in the summer. So you just hope that everyone stays fit. And I think if everyone stays fit, I can see 12, 13 wins. They're in the tough division, I think most of them teams are going to get up to 9, 10 wins, just because they're playing the AFC South. So hopefully there's plenty of points. A lot of rushing as usual, but I'm just hoping for a more exciting, fun year where they actually score points. It felt like last year there was too many field goals being kicked, so I'm hoping for a lot more touchdowns, and which should hopefully result in a lot more wins. So yeah, I'm looking fairly positive this year. I don't think they're not as good as previous years, but with everything, all the teams they're playing, I can see them getting back to the playoffs.
And obviously, having CMC back isn't just good fancy. It's good just for your Sunday afternoon, evenings viewing as well, watching talented players do talented things. Well, thank you very much, Joe. Really appreciate you giving us some time. For those watching, where can people find you and the content yourself and your team put out?
Yeah, so one most social platforms. So just if you search for Good Teams Wins Great Teams Cover or GTW_GTC, we're on all the usual ones: YouTube, Instagram, X, all of them. If you just look out for us, we've just started our division preview, so we've just done the first four. We've just done AFC North. So if you enjoy any of the divisions, check us out, or even if it's not your division, have a look. And yeah, the following weeks we'll be hitting the remaining four. So yeah, all good fun. NFL's coming back, and yeah, our Sunday should be entertaining again, and not just twiddling our fingers waiting for the first week.
Well, amazing. Thank you very much, Joe. And for everyone tuned in right now, if you want to now head into our channel page and find one of the other 31 deep dive shows to go and check out as well. And then once you're in there, head across to Good Teams Win Great Cover to see their divisional breakdowns also. Well, thank you very much, everyone. It is all from me. That is all from Joe. So it's time, as always, for Malcolm.
You have been listening to Pestle and Ed of TH Fantasy Football. For more content, follow TH_fantasy_NFL on Instagram and Twitter.